I was killed and cannibalized by my husband Merrick and his family during the third year of the apocalypse's bitter winter. Before dying, I learned that Jasper, the son I had raised for 5 years, was not my own but the child of my husband and his lover Vesper, while my real daughter had been switched at birth and her whereabouts remained unknown. As my consciousness faded, I miraculously reborn 3 months before the apocalypse, simultaneously discovering I possessed a massive alternate space capable of storing supplies with time standing still within it. Calmly, I devised a revenge plan, first gathering evidence of Marek's infidelity while preparing divorce proceedings. Determined not to be a helpless lamb led to slaughter in this life, I died. To be more precise, I was being sliced alive into pieces of flesh on the dining table I once called home. The way Merrick held the knife chilled me to the bone with its practiced ease. My mother-in-law stood by, instructing him on the angle of the cuts to ensure the meat would be at its tenderest. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law Ivy held a basin beneath to catch the dripping blood, muttering, "Don't let it go to waste." What shattered my heart the most was my son, Jasper. The child I had raised for 5 years was now leaning against the table, watching everything without blinking. Then, lifting his innocent little face, he asked, "Daddy, when will Mommy's meat be ready to cook? I'm hungry." Merrick smiled and patted his head. "Soon, son. Mommy is finally being useful for once." In the bone-chilling pain, I heard Merrick cutting my flesh while saying to the entire family, "She's useless anyway. Might as well contribute to the family. Did you know? I just found out that Jasper isn't even her biological child. He's Vesper's and mine. The worthless girl she gave birth to was swapped long ago." My consciousness drifted in the excruciating agony, but those words seared into my soul like a red-hot iron clamp. So that's it. Not only was I betrayed and murdered, but I was also deceived for 5 whole years. Where is my real daughter? Is she even alive? Endless hatred and resentment drowned me like a tidal wave. If only I could start over. If only. The moment everything went completely dark before my eyes, I seemed to hear a voice whisper in my ear, "As you wish." A piercing alarm jolted me awake. I sat up abruptly, drenched in sweat, my hands trembling uncontrollably as I frantically checked my body. Intact, no wounds, nothing missing. The phone on the nightstand displayed, September 12th, 2023, 7:30 a.m. Is this 3 months before the apocalypse arrives? I rushed to the bathroom, and in the mirror was a face both familiar and unfamiliar, without the exhaustion and weariness of 3 years in the apocalypse, its gaze not yet consumed by despair and numbness. This was me before the apocalypse, Luna, an ordinary 30-year-old housewife. Not a dream, I murmured to myself, the pain from pinching my arm confirming it. I had truly been reborn, returned to before the tragedy began. Just then, a strange sensation surged through me. I closed my eyes, and my consciousness seemed to enter a vast, gray, boundless space. The moment I thought exit, I was instantly back in the bathroom, another dimension. My eyes widened. This was an ability only a few fortunate individuals awakened after the apocalypse. I never expected that rebirth would come with such a golden finger. After calming down, I began to sort through my memories. In my previous life, on this very day, Merrick claimed he was working overtime, but in reality, he was sneaking off to meet his mistress, Vesper. My mother-in-law would call, asking me to buy her blood pressure medication, while my sister-in-law Ivy would coincidentally drop by and conveniently walk off with the 2,000 yuan in cash I had just withdrawn. 3 months later, a sudden acid rain marked the beginning of the apocalypse. It was followed by continuous earthquakes and extreme weather, and within 2 weeks, social order completely collapsed. Our family of 5 struggled to survive in a cramped city apartment until the food ran out, and then I became the food. My fingers dug deep into my palms, but the pain was nothing compared to the hatred in my heart. In this life, I will make you pay in blood, I swore to my reflection in the mirror. First, I need evidence. In my past life, I only found out before my death that Merrick was cheating and had a child with Vesper. This time, I will take the initiative. I picked up my phone, canceled all my plans for the day, and sent Merrick a message. "Honey, I'm accompanying Mom to the hospital today. Figure out dinner on your own." He replied instantly, "Okay, sweetheart, take care," followed by a heart emoji. Hypocrisy, I sneered. How could I have been so foolish in my past life to believe such perfunctory concern? I turned on my computer and logged into Marek's cloud drive. The password was Jasper's birthday, which he had never changed. After searching for a while, I finally found a surprise in a hidden folder, over a gigabyte of Vesper's photos, and hospital test results, a pregnancy ultrasound of Vesper, dated 5 years ago. So it started this early. I clenched my teeth and kept digging. Soon, in a folder labeled Work Documents, I found even more evidence, chat logs between Merrick and Vesper. Not only had they conspired to transfer assets, but they had also discussed how to make my death look like an accident to claim the insurance money. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the mouse, so in my past life, they had long planned to kill me. The apocalypse had just given them a more reasonable excuse. I quickly copied all these materials onto my hard drive and then erased any traces of my access. Next came the most heartbreaking part, verifying Jasper's origins. I pulled out Jasper's birth certificate and my prenatal records. Carefully comparing the dates, sure enough, they didn't match. Jasper was born nearly a month earlier than my actual delivery date, Vesper. I silently repeated the name, one I hadn't heard until the moment before my death in my past life, yet it had already ruined my entire existence. I dug out the family photo album and found pictures of Jasper as a newborn. Looking closely now, his facial features clearly resembled Vesper more than me. How ironic, for 5 years. I never realized I was raising the child of the other woman, and my biological daughter. Where is she? Vesper's cousin. I suddenly remembered the fragments of words Merrick mentioned before his death. Vesper has a cousin who works at an orphanage. It's highly likely my child was sent there. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. First, settle the divorce and property issues, then find my daughter. There are still 3 months until the apocalypse, enough time for me to prepare my revenge plan. Just then, my phone rang. The screen displayed the words mother-in-law. With a cold smile, I answered the call. Hello, Mom. Luna, I've run out of my blood pressure medication. Go buy me a few boxes and bring them over. The voice on the other end of the phone was my mother-in-law's usual commanding tone, without even a greeting. Sorry, Mom, I'm not feeling well today. Let Ivy go buy them for you. I replied calmly. There was a noticeable pause on the other end before the volume increased. What's wrong with you? A little discomfort and you start making excuses. Did my son marry you just to have you sit around? In the past, I would have immediately apologized meekly, but now, I just found it laughable. Mom, I'm really not feeling well. Why don't you ask your precious son to go buy it? After all, she is his biological mother. I deliberately emphasized the words precious son. You, my mother-in-law's voice trembled with anger. Fine, just you wait. She hung up the phone. I could almost picture her stomping around in fury on the other end. This was just the beginning. I turned on my computer and started drafting the divorce papers. This time, I was going to make sure Merrick ended up with nothing, just like he had done to me. Then, I will find my biological daughter, build an indestructible safe house, and stockpile enough supplies. When the apocalypse comes, I will watch those who have hurt me struggle and die in agony, one by one. My fingers fly across the keyboard as the revenge plan takes shape. This time, I won't be soft-hearted, won't hesitate. And certainly won't play the role of a helpless saint. The most terrifying thing in the apocalypse isn't the disasters, it's human nature, and in this life, I will become their worst nightmare. I stared at the bank statements on the computer screen, my fingers tapping lightly on the desk. Merrick thought he was being discreet, but under my deliberate investigation, the transferred assets stood out like fireflies in the night. Over the past week, I had continued to play the role of the dutiful wife on the surface, while secretly digging up every last detail of Marek's activities. A fixed monthly transfer of 20,000 to Thor's account, I sneered. Thor was Marek's college classmate, and in my past life, I had no idea what their connection was until the day I died. Now it was clear, Marek had been using this person's name to open a shadow account. I opened the mobile banking app and checked the balance in our joint account, 376,542 yuan. It seemed like a substantial amount, but I knew that 3 years ago, this number should have been 3 times higher, with Marek's annual salary and bonuses totaling at least 800,000. Even after deducting mortgage payments and living expenses, there shouldn't be so little left. My fingers glided across the touchpad as I continued scrolling through the transaction records. Every few months, there was an expenditure of around 50,000. With the remark always being investment and wealth management, in my past life, I never questioned the family finances. Whatever Merrick said, I believed. Pathetic, I muttered, shaking my head at my own foolishness before taking screenshots of these records as well. My phone vibrated, the screen displaying Detective Ridge. I answered the call immediately. MS, Luna, I've compiled the information you requested. Came a deep male voice on the other end. It's even more fascinating than you imagined. Send it to my email, I replied tersely, though my heart involuntarily quickened its pace. 10 minutes later, as I stared at the photos and videos Detective Ridge had sent to my computer screen, a surge of bile rose in my stomach. The images showed Merrick and Vesper kissing in a restaurant, checking into a hotel, and even a video of them entangled on our marital bed. The very week I had returned to my parents' home to care for my sick father. Bastard. I gritted my teeth and continued scrolling. The final document made me bolt upright, a photo of Vesper playing with a little girl around 4 years old at an amusement park. The child wore her hair in 2 small braids, dressed in a pink dress, her eyes crinkling into crescent moons when she smiled. My fingers unconsciously brushed against the screen. That little girl, those eyes were exactly like mine when I was a child. This is... My voice choked up, based on your description. I tracked Vesper and discovered this child, Detective Ridge explained over the phone. The girl's name is Nora, registered under Vesper's cousin Ria, but Vesper is her actual guardian. The birth date matches your daughter's, my biological daughter. Something exploded in my chest, a surge of warmth flooding through my limbs. She's alive, and so close. I want her detailed information, and I want it now. I struggled to keep my voice from trembling. It's already in the email attachment, but... Detective Ridge hesitated. There's something you should know. Vesper and Ria seem to frequently beat and scold the child. I captured a few videos, and they're not pleasant to watch. My vision darkened, and I nearly dropped my phone. After taking 3 deep breaths, I finally dared to open the video. In the footage, my Nora was being dragged into a room by her hair by an obese woman, the little girl crying hysterically and screaming. I won't do it again, I promise. My nails dug deep into my palms, blood trickling down the lines of my hands, yet I felt no pain, compared to the agony in my heart. What did these superficial wounds matter? MS, Luna, are you all right? Detective Ridge's voice pulled me back to reality. Find out where they live, which school the child attends, everything, I said, enunciating each word. Also, keep tailing Merrick, I want to know where every penny of his goes. Hanging up the phone, I collapsed into the chair, utterly drained. In my past life, I only learned of my daughter's existence on my deathbed. This time, I swear to keep her far away from those demons. But first, I need money, a lot of money. I opened the notebook in the bedside drawer and found the set of numbers from my past life's memory, the winning numbers for the Super Lotto jackpot drawn 2 months before the apocalypse. At the time, the news had shocked the entire nation, with the winner taking home a staggering 320 million yuan prize. Tomorrow is the drawing day. I put on my coat and headed straight to the lottery station at the entrance of the neighborhood. The owner, Talon, was idly scrolling through his phone. Uncle Talon, 1 ticket for the lotto. I handed over the slip with the numbers and 10 yuan. Talon took the slip and tapped a few buttons on the machine. Pick these yourself. They look pretty patterned, just random picks. I smiled. If I win, I'll split it with you. Talon burst out laughing. I'll hold you to that then. I tucked the lottery ticket away and nearly bumped into someone as I turned around. Looking up, it was Auntie Ria from the neighborhood, a card-playing friend of Marek's mother. Oh dear, Luna, where are you off to in such a hurry? Auntie Ria squinted at the lottery ticket in my hand. Buying lottery tickets. Does Marek know about this? I barely resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Hello, Auntie Ria, just playing around for fun. Young people should be more down to earth, Auntie Ria said with deep concern. I heard you haven't been visiting your grandmother's place much lately. Marek's mother isn't too happy about it. The news spreads fast. I forced a fake smile. I've been a bit busy lately. I'll definitely go another day, leaving the lottery station. I didn't head straight home but went to a nearby mall instead. I needed to test the limits of the alternate space. Entering a supermarket, I pushed a shopping cart, pretending to be an ordinary customer. When no one was looking, I stored a few packs of biscuits and bottled water into the space. There was no resistance, just like putting things into an invisible pocket. I then tried larger items, a 10-kilogram bag of rice, which was just as easily stored in the space. The most amazing part was when I used my consciousness to look inside the space. The biscuits and bottled water I had put in earlier were floating motionless in the gray void, as if time had stood still. This discovery made my heart race. If time stands still within the space, it means food won't spoil, ice won't melt. It's practically the perfect sheet for surviving the apocalypse. I nearly emptied the supermarket's stock of bottled water, renting a small truck under the astonished gaze of the store clerk to haul everything home. Before Merrick got off work, I stored all the water in the space. At 10 p.m., Merrick finally stumbled home, reeking of alcohol, with lipstick stains on his tie. Another business dinner. I feigned concern as I handed him a towel, suppressing the urge to push him off the balcony. Yeah, a big client, he answered vaguely, his eyes wandering. Where did you go today? Mom called and said you didn't visit her. Not feeling well, stayed home to rest, I replied calmly, noticing the familiar scent of Chanel No. 5, Vesper's favorite, lingering on his suit. Merrick muttered a few words and went to take a shower. Seizing the chance, I checked his phone. The password was Jasper's birthday, unchanged as always. The chat history with Vesper on WeChat had been thoroughly deleted, but there was a text from Thor in his messages. The final 500K has been transferred to the overseas account. All procedures are complete. I quickly snapped a photo of this message. It seems Merrick not only transferred assets but is also preparing to flee. He didn't pull this stunt in my past life. Is it because my actions have changed? Or did he have this plan in the previous life too? I just didn't know. Early the next morning, I used grocery shopping as an excuse to leave the house and headed straight to the lottery center. The winning numbers matched my memory exactly. I had hit the jackpot. The prize redemption process went smoother than expected. After taxes, $256 million was directly deposited into my newly opened private account. My legs were weak as I walked out of the lottery center. This money is more than enough to execute all my plans. I first contacted a divorce lawyer with an excellent reputation, based on the evidence you've provided. Not only can you claim the other party is at fault to demand a larger share of the assets, but you can also pursue legal action for their transfer and concealment of property. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. However, such cases require a more complete chain of evidence, too. I'll provide it, I said confidently. With Detective Ridge's help, this wouldn't be a problem at all. Next was the safe house. I drove to the suburbs and found a standalone villa for sale halfway up a hillside. The location was remote, but it had an open view, its own basement and garage, and tall, sturdy walls. This house was originally built by a wealthy man, but it's been left vacant since he emigrated, the agent enthusiastically explained. Though it's a bit remote, it's absolutely quiet and private. I was almost instantly drawn to it. After the apocalypse, city centers became the most dangerous places, and this semi-suburban location wouldn't attract too much attention while keeping me away from the most chaotic areas. I'll take it, full payment, I said decisively. The agent nearly bit his tongue. You aren't going to negotiate. The owner's asking price is $23 million. I can sign the contract today, on the condition that I get the keys immediately and you take care of clearing out all the personal belongings left by the previous owner. 3 hours later, I stood in the empty villa holding the new house keys, echoes reverberating through the spacious living room. This house would be the fortress for Nora and me. My phone suddenly rang. It was Merrick. Luna, where are you? Mom came by the house and said she needs to talk to you. His voice carried obvious impatience. I'll be right back. I curled my lips. The show is about to begin. Upon returning home, as soon as I opened the door, I saw Marek's mom sitting on the sofa with a stern face, while Merrick was playing with his phone nearby, not even bothering to look up. Mom, you're here. I pretended to greet her respectfully. Marek's mom snorted coldly. It's so hard to see you these days. Do I need to make an appointment in advance? In my past life, I would have already lowered my head and admitted my mistake by now. But this time, I calmly set down my bag and sat across from her. Is there something you'd like to discuss? Marek's mom clearly didn't expect this attitude from me. After a brief pause, she grew even angrier. What kind of attitude is this? My son works hard to support the family, while you laze around all day and don't even understand basic filial duty. I glanced at Merrick, who was still engrossed in his mobile game, completely oblivious to our conversation. Mom, first of all, I also work. Half of the household expenses are covered by my salary, I said deliberately. Secondly, your son didn't come home until 10 p.m. last night, with lipstick on his tie and perfume on his clothes. Don't you think you should ask him where he was first? Merrick suddenly raised his head, his face instantly changing color. Marek's mom was also stunned but quickly snapped back. What do you mean, suspecting my son? Merrick is so outstanding. It's only natural for women to throw themselves at him. You couldn't keep your man, and now you're blaming him. The words were so disgusting I nearly vomited, but it was exactly what I wanted. I quietly pressed the recorder in my pocket. So you think it's perfectly justified for your son to cheat? I deliberately steered the conversation. Of course, Marek's mom said proudly. My son is so outstanding. What's wrong with having a few more women? If you know what's good for you, just behave and stop snooping around all the time. Who would want you if you left my son? Merrick finally couldn't take it anymore. Mom, stop it. I pulled out a voice recorder and waved it in front of them. Thank you for your wonderful remarks. All of this will serve as evidence in the divorce lawsuit. Marek's mom turned pale instantly, while Merrick stood frozen in place as if struck by lightning. You, Marek's mom pointed at me, her finger trembling. By the way, I added with a smile, I already know Jasper isn't my biological child, but rather your son and Vesper's illegitimate child. Also, I will recover every penny of the marital assets he's been transferring over the years. Merrick suddenly stood up. Luna, let me explain. No need. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. The lawyer's letter will be delivered to your company tomorrow. Oh, and pack your things and move out tonight. This house won't be yours for much longer. The moment I closed the door, I heard Marek's mom's hysterical screams and Marek's curses from inside. This is just the beginning. My list of vengeance is still long. Tomorrow, I'm going to see my daughter Nora. Thinking of her tear-stained little face in the video, my heart wrenched again. But before that, I need a more detailed safe house renovation plan and a supply list. The apocalypse is only 2 months away, time is running out. I turned on my computer and began listing the items I needed to procure: bulletproof glass, solar power systems, water purification equipment, medical supplies, weapons. With each item I wrote down, a weight lifted from my heart. In this lifetime, I will make those who have hurt me pay 100-fold. The courtroom's air conditioning was blasting. Cold air hissing from the vents, yet I felt no chill. The sweat from my palms had soaked the edges of the file folder. 3 months of investigation and preparation, all for this moment. Merrick and his lawyer sat across from me. Every now and then, he would glance at me with a sinister look, a faint, mocking smile playing at the corners of his lips. He probably still thought this divorce case would go as smoothly as he had anticipated, me walking away with a pittance of alimony before slinking out of his life in disgrace. Unfortunately, today's script is written by me. The court is now in session. The judge rapped the gavel. The case of plaintiff Luna versus defendant Merrick regarding divorce disputes is now being heard. My lawyer, Felicity, stood up and succinctly stated the claims: divorce, property division, and compensation for emotional distress. As she spoke, Mark's lawyer kept shaking his head, occasionally jotting something down in his notebook. Does the defense have any response? The judge asked. Mark's lawyer cleared his throat. Your Honor, my client agrees to the divorce, but the property division proposed by the plaintiff is entirely unreasonable. Mr. Merrick is the primary breadwinner of the family, and the plaintiff's demand for a 70% share of the assets is completely unfounded. Felicity was well prepared. Your Honor, we have substantial evidence proving that the defendant committed serious misconduct and maliciously transferred marital assets. Please look at the screen. The courtroom projector lit up, first playing a video of Merrick and Vesper on our marital bed. The footage was so clear that even the mole on Mark's back was visible in detail. The courtroom erupted in uproar. Mark's face instantly turned beet red, and his lawyer froze, clearly not expecting us to have such irrefutable evidence. This is a violation of privacy. Merrick suddenly stood up, pointing at my nose. When did you install the camera? Order. The judge banged the gavel heavily. Defendant, control your emotions. I calmly met Mark's furious gaze, the corners of my lips curling slightly. This camera was installed on the 3rd day after my rebirth, hidden inside the bedside alarm clock. In my past life, he betrayed me. This time, I'll make him pay the price. Felicity continued presenting evidence. Bank statements showing Merrick had transferred nearly $4 million over the past 3 years. Photos taken by Detective Ridge of Merrick and Vesper taking Jasper on outings. And the most damning of all, my secret recording of Mark's mom's brilliant speech about how it's only natural for my son to cheat. According to Article 1091 of the Civil Code, the defendant cohabited with another person, committing a grave fault, and thus should receive a reduced share or no share of the property, Felicity declared firmly. Furthermore, the defendant maliciously transferred jointly owned marital assets. Pursuant to Article 1092, the transferred portion must be recovered and redistributed. Mark's lawyer had beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he leaned in to whisper something into Mark's ear. Mark's expression grew increasingly grim. Court adjourned for 15 minutes, the judge announced. Merrick dragged his lawyer out of the courtroom in haste, and I faintly overheard his suppressed roar. Didn't you say it was foolproof? Felicity patted my shoulder and said, well done. They're completely thrown off balance. 15 minutes later, Mark's side proposed a settlement. The house would go to me, the savings would be split equally, and he would no longer pursue the funds I had already transferred. He thought I had only moved a small portion, but in reality, I had already transferred most of the liquid assets. Additionally, he would relinquish any claim to Jasper's child support. Not acceptable, I said firmly. I want the Porsche under his name and 10% of the company's shares. Felicity hesitated. The company's shares might be a bit difficult. Tell him if he doesn't agree, I'll post all this evidence online and CC a copy to his board of directors, I said coldly. His tech company is in a critical fundraising phase. Investors would surely be fascinated by the CEO's colorful private life. Felicity's eyes lit up, and she nodded before heading off to negotiate with him. 10 minutes later, Merrick signed the settlement agreement through gritted teeth. He was left with almost nothing, just some cash in the apartment he'd bought for Vesper. All other assets went to me. Luna, you're ruthless. Merrick blocked my path after signing, his voice barely above a whisper. But don't celebrate too soon. This isn't over. I looked straight into his eyes and found them filled with a venom I had never seen before. The Merrick from my past life was cold-blooded, but at least he maintained a facade of basic decency on the surface. No, it was as if he had torn off all disguises. Of course it's not over, I replied softly. This is just the beginning. Stepping out of the courthouse, the sunlight made me squint. The first step of the plan was complete. And now came the more crucial task, taking back my daughter. I took out my phone and dialed Detective Ridge's number. We've got Ria's address and daily routine figured out, Detective Ridge said. She takes Nora to kindergarten every morning at 8 and picks her up at 4 in the afternoon. On Wednesday afternoons, she takes Nora to the play area in the mall. That's our best opportunity to make contact. Today was Wednesday. I checked my watch, too. 30 p.m. Send me the mall address. I'm heading there now. On the third floor of Sunshine International Shopping Mall, the children's play area was a cheerful little world of colorful ball pits and inflatable slides. I sat in a nearby cafe, my eyes fixed on the entrance behind dark sunglasses. At 3:40, a plump middle-aged woman walked in holding a little girl by the hand, my breath caught in my throat. It was Nora, my daughter. She was even thinner and smaller than in the photos. Wearing an ill-fitting yellow dress, walking with her head down, completely lacking the liveliness a 4-year-old should have, Ria roughly tugged at her arm, muttering something incessantly, while Nora only shrank back and nodded timidly. My nails dug deep into my palms. The scenes of abuse I had seen in the video were far less shocking than witnessing them firsthand. How dare that obese woman treat my child like this? Ria bought a ticket, shoved Nora into the play area, and then sat on a nearby bench scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath and walked toward the play area. It's time to meet my daughter. I bought a cup of juice, pretending to be an ordinary customer, and naturally sat down at the table next to Nora. She was quietly playing with building blocks by herself, occasionally stealing glances in Ria's direction, her movements careful as if afraid of making too much noise. Little one, the house you built is really beautiful, I said softly, pushing the juice toward her. Would you like some juice? Nora looked up at me warily, then at the juice, her small face filled with hesitation. Her eyes, those big eyes identical to mine, were brimming with a wariness that didn't match her age. Auntie isn't a bad person. I tried to keep my voice steady. I just saw you playing alone and wanted to chat with you. Nora's gaze lingered on my face for a few seconds. Suddenly, she tilted her head and asked, Auntie, do you know me? I was startled. Why do you ask that? Because the way you look at me, Nora furrowed her little brow, is like how Mommy looks at Jasper. The word stabbed into my heart like a knife. Did she know Vesper is Jasper's mother? Then does she know who I am? Nora, Ria's shout cut through our conversation. Who told you to talk to strangers? The woman strode over, yanked Nora up, and glared at me viciously. Who are you? What did you say to my daughter? Suppressing the urge to tear her apart, I forced a smile. Sorry, I just thought the child was adorable and wanted to buy her some juice. Cut the crap. Ria looked me up and down, then suddenly narrowed her eyes. Wait, I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. My heart skipped a beat. Did she recognize me? Just then, Nora suddenly grabbed Ria's hand. Mom, my stomach hurts. Ria's attention immediately shifted. Here we go again. It's always something with you. She roughly pulled Nora away. I'll deal with you when we get home. Before being dragged away, Nora glanced back at me with a look too complex for a 4-year-old, curiosity, confusion, and a hint of anticipation. I sat there, trembling all over. In that moment, I almost lost control, but reason told me that rash action would only alert the enemy and put Nora in greater danger. I needed a more thorough plan. The next day, I met with Vince, who specializes in custody cases. The situation is quite complicated. Vince adjusted his glasses. You claim the child is biologically yours, but the birth certificate lists Vesper as the mother, and Ria is currently the legal guardian. To prove the child is yours, we'll first need a DNA test. I have a way to obtain a sample. I recalled a strand of Nora's hair that had fallen in the play area, which I had carefully preserved, even if paternity is proven. The other party may argue that you've long neglected your parental responsibilities. Vince frowned. Courts generally favor maintaining the status quo. I was prepared. Pulling a USB drive from my bag, I said, this contains video evidence of Ria abusing the child, as well as recordings of Vesper and Merrick conspiring to switch the babies. Vince's eyes lit up after reviewing the materials. This makes things much easier. We can apply for an emergency protection order to remove the child from the dangerous environment first. 3 days later, after careful planning, Nora was rescued. That afternoon, Ria went to pick up Nora from school as usual. Just as they left the school gate, they were stopped by police officers and social workers. Ms. Ria, we've received reports suspecting child abuse. The social worker presented the documents. We need to temporarily remove Nora from your custody for investigation. What? Ria screamed. Who reported this? That's nonsense. Nora is my daughter. According to this DNA test report, Nora is not biologically related to you. The police officer said calmly, and this Ms. Luna has provided sufficient evidence to prove she is the child's birth mother. I stepped forward from the crowd, and Ria's face instantly turned pale. It's you, she pointed at me, her voice trembling. I thought you looked familiar that day. You're Marek's ex-wife. I ignored her, my gaze settling on Nora. The little girl stood beside the social worker, her eyes wide as she looked back and forth between me and Ria, clearly at a loss. Nora. I crouched down to meet her eye level. My name is Luna, and I'm your new mom. Starting today, you'll be living with me. Okay, Nora blinked. Unexpectedly, she didn't show any fear or resistance. Instead, she reached out a small hand and gently touched my cheek. I know you, she whispered. I dreamed about you. There was fire and heavy rain in the dream. I shuddered all over. Fire and heavy rain. Could she have dreamed of the apocalypse? How could a 4-year-old The social worker interrupted my thoughts. Ms. Luna, according to the procedure, Nora needs to stay at the children's welfare home temporarily. She can only be officially placed in your care after all the paperwork is completed. I nodded, though I wished I could take Nora away immediately, but legal procedures must be followed. Before leaving, Nora suddenly turned back and asked me, "Auntie, will I see Jasper again?" The question pierced my heart like a knife. Had she lived with Jasper? Did she know he was her half-brother? "If you wish," I whispered in promise, though deep down I knew the Merrick family must never get close to Nora again. A week later, all the paperwork was completed, and Nora officially became my ward. When I drove to the orphanage to pick her up, I noticed a bit more color in her little face, and her eyes no longer held that timid look. "I'm here to take you home," I said, crouching down to hug her, catching the faint scent of shampoo in her hair. This was my daughter, my long-lost treasure finally returned to me. Nora leaned against my shoulder and whispered, "Does the new house have a big room, Mom Ria?" "No, Aunt Ria said I'd be living in the basement with the mice." My heart twisted into a knot. "No, sweetheart, your room has pink walls, lots of toys, and a big window where you can see the stars." Nora's eyes lit up, and she extended her pinky finger. "Pinky promise, pinky promise." I hooked her tiny finger, my throat tightening. On the way home, Nora kept gazing at the scenery rushing past the window, occasionally letting out small exclamations of wonder. At a red light, she suddenly turned to me. "Auntie, why does the sky sometimes bleed?" I froze. "What? I saw it in a dream." Nora said seriously, "Red rain, and then everyone got sick. It was so scary." She shivered. "It was just a dream, right?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. It wasn't a dream, it was the reality to come. And Nora, did she have some kind of precognitive ability? "It was just a dream." I forced a smile and changed the subject. "Look, we're almost home." As the car drove through the villa's gate, Nora's mouth fell open in astonishment. The 3-story villa was surrounded by high walls, with the front yard transformed into a vegetable garden and the backyard equipped with solar panel arrays and a rainwater collection system. "Is this a castle?" Nora whispered. "This is our safe house," I replied softly, "a place that can protect us from harm." I showed Nora around her room, just as I had promised, with pink walls, a cabinet filled with toys, and a bay window with a view of the sky. The little girl excitedly bounced on the bed, momentarily forgetting those terrifying dreams. That night, after putting Nora to sleep, I stood on the balcony, gazing at the distant city lights. For the first time in 3 months, I felt a hint of peace. My daughter was back, the divorce was finalized, and the safe house was now partially complete. But I knew the real test was yet to come. The apocalypse was approaching, and the Merrick family would never let this go. My phone suddenly vibrated, a message from Detective Ridge. "Merrick and Vesper are inquiring about your whereabouts. They seem to have discovered your lottery win and are furious. Be careful." I let out a cold laugh and turned off my phone. "Let them come. This time, I'm ready." Turning back into the house, I gently pushed open Nora's door. She was fast asleep, her little face looking especially peaceful under the nightlight. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "In this life, Mommy won't let anyone hurt you." At 3:17 a.m., a scream shattered the silence. I sprang up from the bed, my heart pounding wildly. Instinctively reaching for the dagger under my pillow, it took me a few seconds to realize the sound was coming from Nora's room. "Nora." I rushed into her room to find her sitting on the bed, trembling all over, her large eyes brimming with fear. The nightlight cast a glow on her pale little face, revealing tear-streaked cheeks. "Mommy." She stretched out her arms, her voice as faint as a mosquito's hum. Ever since she started calling me Mommy a week ago, each time I heard that address, a surge of warmth would rise in my chest, but now, there was only a chilling unease. I held her close, feeling her tiny body shake violently in my arms. "Did you have a nightmare?" "No, not a dream," Nora sobbed. "It's real. It's coming soon." I pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. "What's coming soon?" "The red rain." Nora's voice suddenly became unusually clear. "Rain that burns people, and then everyone gets sick. Becomes so terrifying." My blood seemed to freeze. "Acid rain." She was describing the beginning of the apocalypse. "What else did you see?" I asked softly, trying not to let my voice tremble. Nora frowned, as if struggling to recall. "Many people were crying. Some turned into monsters, but not real monsters. They were starving." Suddenly, she grabbed my arm. "Mom, we can't go outside. There are bad people out there. We won't go out." I held her tightly. "Our house is very safe, remember? Thick walls, strong locks, and Mommy is here." Nora gradually calmed down, but her eyes remained wide open. "Have you dreamed about it too?" This question caught me off guard. How should I explain something like reincarnation to a 4-year-old? "I know a little about it." I carefully chose my words. "That's why I prepared such a safe house." "Nora, do you often have dreams like this?" She nodded. "Since I was very little. Sometimes it's rain, sometimes it's fire, and sometimes it's very, very cold snow." She shivered. The scariest part is the people. They look like people, but they're not really anymore. My throat tightened. What Nora described were exactly the stages of the apocalypse I had experienced in my past life: acid rain, wildfires, extreme cold, and the most terrifying of all, the loss of humanity. If you have this kind of dream again, tell mommy right away. Okay, I stroked her hair. It's very important. Nora nodded, yawned, and nestled into my arms. Soon. Her breathing became steady as she fell asleep. I gently laid her back in bed and tucked her in, but I couldn't fall asleep again. What does Nora's ability mean? Why does she have precognition? Could it be related to the impending apocalypse? Standing by the window, I gazed at the city lights in the distance. With less than 2 months until the apocalypse begins, I must speed up my preparations. Early the next morning, after dropping Nora off at kindergarten, I headed straight to the building materials market. The solar panels originally scheduled for installation next week needed to be installed sooner, along with the rainwater filtration system and backup generator. Nora's precognitive abilities confirmed that the apocalypse would arrive as expected, and I had to ensure the safe house was foolproof. The building materials market was bustling with people, pushing a shopping cart. I checked off various tools and materials from my list. Just as I was struggling to lift a box of waterproof paint from the shelf, a large, bony hand reached over and effortlessly tipped the box. Need some help? I looked up and met a pair of sharp, eagle-like eyes. The man was around 35, with a buzz cut, a tall and straight posture, and a few prominent scars on his bronzed skin. Dressed in a simple black t-shirt and cargo pants, he exuded the unmistakable aura of a soldier. Thanks, I can manage, I said warily, trying to take the box from him. Of course, he nodded but didn't let go. It's just that you look like you're about to rebuild the entire house. He glanced at the mountain of supplies in my shopping cart, from steel bars and cement to solar panel accessories, and enough tools to arm a small arsenal. I instinctively tensed up. Just some home renovations. Understood, he smiled, finally releasing his grip. Evander, he introduced himself briefly, making no move to shake hands, maintaining just the right distance. Luna. I responded curtly, pushing the shopping cart to leave. There was a dangerous aura about this man named Evander, not the insidious kind like Merrick, but a professionally trained alertness, a veteran, a cop. Either way, it was best to avoid crossing paths with such people before the apocalypse. Miss Luna, he called from behind me, if you're really reinforcing your house, don't forget the basement vents. Most people overlook that spot. I froze. How did he know I was building a safe house? I turned my head, but he had already walked toward another shelf, waving at me over his shoulder as if it had just been a casual chat. I quickly checked out and left, my heart pounding like a drum. Who is this Evander? Why did he know so much about my business? More importantly, could he be a threat? For the next 2 weeks, I spent almost all my time renovating the safe house. The solar power system was installed, bulletproof steel plates were added to the roof, and all the windows were replaced with triple laminated glass. The perimeter wall was raised to 4 meters, topped with an electric fence and broken glass shards. The basement was converted into a second living area, equipped with an independent air filtration system and water storage. What I'm most proud of is the armory. Though I couldn't get firearms, I prepared plenty of bows, arrows, daggers, and homemade Molotov cocktails. 3 years of survival experience in the apocalypse from my past life taught me one thing: the most terrifying threat isn't natural disasters, but people who have lost their humanity. Nora's precognitive abilities also gradually emerged. She could not only dream of the impending catastrophe but also sense imminent dangers. One day, when we went to the supermarket for supplies, she tugged at my sleeve just as we reached the entrance. "Mom, don't go in. There are bad people." I immediately took her away. 10 minutes later, a knife-wielding robbery occurred at that supermarket, leaving 2 people injured. This incident made me realize that Nora's ability might be the key to our survival in the apocalypse. But her abilities also brought new worries. After each premonition, Nora would become unusually exhausted, sometimes even experiencing nosebleeds. I searched through a vast amount of information but couldn't find any records of similar abilities. Perhaps this is some kind of mutation brought on by the apocalypse, or a new ability evolved by humans. No matter what, I must protect her. Not only because she is my daughter, but also because her ability might be the key to humanity's survival in this apocalyptic world. That afternoon, while I was checking the food reserves in the basement, my phone suddenly rang. It was Detective Ridge. "MS, Luna, there's a situation." His voice was grave. "Merrick is inquiring about your whereabouts. He seems to have found out about your lottery win and is furious. What's worse, he's hired someone to follow you." I gripped my phone tightly. "When did this happen?" "It started yesterday. I noticed a car lingering near your villa. Check the license plate. It belongs to a private detective agency." Detective Ridge paused. "There's something else. Merrick and Vesper have been arguing frequently lately. From what I've overheard, Vesper wants to emigrate with Jasper, but Merrick refuses. He seems obsessed with getting revenge on you." I let out a cold laugh. Let him come. I've been waiting for this. 3. Don't take it lightly. Ms. Luna, Detective Ridge warned. Merrick has nothing left to lose. A cornered dog will jump over the wall, and he seems very interested in Nora. He's mentioned multiple times wanting to take back what belongs to him. My blood ran cold in an instant. If he dares to lay a finger on Nora, I'll make him wish he were dead. After hanging up the phone, I immediately checked all the surveillance and defense systems in the villa. Everything was normal. But I still couldn't relax. Merrick was a treacherous scoundrel. In our past life, he could devour me to survive, and in this life, for money and revenge, there was nothing you wouldn't do. While putting Nora to bed that night, I casually asked, "Sweetheart, have you been having those dreams lately?" Nora shook her head, then nodded. "Not dreams anymore. Sometimes I can feel it during the day too." She scrunched up her little face, as if searching for the right words, like, "There's a voice talking in my head." "What kind of voice?" "I can't explain it clearly." Nora rubbed her eyes. "Sometimes it's a warning, sometimes it's something else. Today at kindergarten, when Lyra touched my head, the voice said, 'Be careful.'" My heart tightened. "Lyra, what did she do to you?" "Nothing. Just, when she touched me, her fingers were very strong, squeezing my head until it hurt," Nora said innocently, "but all the other kids say Lyra is the gentlest." I immediately decided to investigate this Lyra at the kindergarten tomorrow. Nora's ability wouldn't give a warning without reason. The next day, after dropping Nora off at the kindergarten, I pretended to have forgotten something and returned, hiding outside the classroom to observe. Sure enough, that seemingly kind and friendly Lyra acted completely differently toward Nora when no one was watching, roughly pulling her arm, forcing her to sit down, and even pinching her little hand when no one was looking. I went straight to the principal and demanded to see the classroom surveillance footage. The footage confirmed my suspicions. This Lyra clearly had abusive tendencies toward Nora. At my strong insistence, the kindergarten agreed to investigate the matter. On the way home, Nora looked up at me with her little face and asked, "Mommy, why doesn't Lyra like me?" I hugged her tightly with a pained heart. "It's not your fault, sweetheart. Some people are just sick in the head. But your ability helped us spot the danger, and that's amazing." "Ability," Nora repeated the word. "Is it a superpower, like on TV, something like that?" I chuckled and gently pinched her little nose. "So you need to learn to control it, only using it when necessary." "Okay, overusing it will make you feel unwell." Nora nodded seriously, then suddenly said, "Mom, that uncle is here again." "Which uncle?" I immediately became alert, tall, wearing black, standing behind the tree. Nora pointed in a direction. "He was outside the kindergarten yesterday too." Following where she pointed, I indeed saw a vague figure quickly hide behind the tree. It wasn't Merrick, but it was likely a private investigator he had hired. "Let's go home." I picked up Nora and quickly walked toward the parking lot. It seemed Merrick had already found us. We needed to speed up the plan to move into the safe house. That evening, I decided to move into the safe house ahead of schedule. Although the original plan was to wait another 2 weeks, Nora's safety was more important than anything else. "Sweetheart, starting tomorrow, we won't be going to kindergarten," I told Nora during dinner. "We're officially moving into our new home." Nora's eyes lit up. "The big castle." "Yes, the big castle." I nodded with a smile. "And we're going to play a game. No opening the door for anyone, only Mommy has the key." "Okay, like the story of the 3 little pigs." Nora tilted her head and asked, "Exactly." I kissed her forehead. "We'll be the smartest little pigs, building the strongest house so the big bad wolf can't get in." Nora giggled but soon turned serious again. "Mommy, will the big bad wolf come?" Gazing at the darkening sky outside the window, I answered softly, "Yes, sweetheart, but this time, he'll be the one who gets eaten." The supermarket's surveillance cameras could hardly capture my movements. I pushed the shopping cart through the aisles, swiftly storing packages of food into my alternate space when no one was looking. Rice, flour, canned goods, instant noodles. These supplies would be more precious than gold after the apocalypse. On the surface, my cart only held a few daily necessities, but in reality, I had already emptied half the supermarket's stock. "Mom, someone's watching us." Nora suddenly tugged at my sleeve and whispered. I immediately stopped what I was doing and pretended to compare the prices of 2 packs of tissues, where, Uncle in the blue clothes, on the right. Nora leaned against me, like any child acting coquettish. "He's been following us from the baby formula section to here." Seizing the chance to grab a tissue, I glanced subtly to the right. Sure enough, a middle-aged man in a blue jacket was lingering near the drinks aisle, occasionally stealing glances in our direction. That wasn't the look of an ordinary shopper, too focused, too deliberate. Not Merrick, but likely someone he hired. Over the past few days, I'd noticed 3 or 4 similarly suspicious figures in different settings. It seemed Detective Ridge's warning was right. Merrick was indeed keeping tabs on me. "Sweetheart, can you sense if that man is dangerous?" I whispered. Nora closed her eyes, shook her head after a moment, and said, "Not danger, observation." She used a new word I had taught her. But I don't like the way he looks at us. You did great. I kissed her forehead. Remember this feeling. It can protect us. At checkout, I noticed the man in the blue jacket had also moved near the register, pretending to browse gum. I deliberately slowed my movements, letting him see I only bought some groceries and a few snacks, leaving the supermarket. I held Nora's hand and intentionally took a few crowded streets to confirm we were indeed being followed before hailing a cab back to the villa. Nora, today we're going to play a game. As soon as I entered the door, I crouched down to meet my daughter at eye level. Suppose someone wants to find our new home. How should we mislead them? Nora tilted her head and thought for a moment. Show them a fake map. I couldn't help but laugh. Pretty much. Later, a car will come to pick us up. But we'll switch vehicles along the way. Remember, no matter what happens, hold on to Mommy's hand tightly. Okay, Nora nodded earnestly, her eyes sparkling with excitement. To a 4-year-old, this probably seemed like an adventure game, but I knew it was a matter of life and death precaution. I called to book a ride-hailing car and deliberately noted in the order remarks, traveling with a child, requires a child safety seat. Then I took Nora and got into the car from the villa's main entrance, instructing the driver to head to the city center. Sir, can you drive a bit faster? My daughter isn't feeling well. I pretended to be anxious, observing through the rearview mirror. Sure enough, a silver sedan quickly followed behind. The ride-hailing car stopped at a downtown mall. Holding Nora's hand, I quickly walked into the bustling shopping center, passed through a few stores, and exited from another entrance. Swiftly boarding another car I had pre-booked, this time, we headed straight to our real destination, a safe house in the suburbs. Shaken off, the driver confirmed to me. I breathed a sigh of relief and looked down at Nora in my arms. She was intently watching the scenery rushing past the window, her little face showing not a trace of fear. This child was even stronger than I had imagined. The safe house was nestled halfway up the mountainside, surrounded by trees and far from the main road. From the outside, it appeared to be just an ordinary European-style villa, but inside, it was a post-apocalyptic fortress I had meticulously built. Wow, Nora cheered as soon as she stepped inside. It really is a castle. I smiled as I watched her dart through the rooms like a happy little bird. To her, this was a giant playground. To me, it was the last line of defense against the apocalypse. Over the next few days, I completed the final preparations for the safe house. The solar system was tested, the water storage tanks were filled, and the backup generator was tuned. The armory was stocked with bows, arrows, daggers, and homemade Molotov cocktails. The medical room was supplied with everything from antibiotics to sutures. What I was most proud of was the surveillance system. 16 high-definition cameras covered every inch of the surrounding land, even including the roads within a 500-meter radius. No person or vehicle approaching could escape my sight. Mom, what's this? Nora pointed at the surveillance screen and asked. These are magic mirrors that protect us, I explained. They let us see people outside, but those outside can't see us. Nora nodded with partial understanding, then suddenly pointed at one of the screens. That person was here yesterday too. I immediately zoomed in on the footage. A man wearing a baseball cap was slowly walking along the road outside the safe house, occasionally stopping to pretend to tie his shoelaces while actually observing my house. Though he had changed clothes, his build matched that of the blue-jacketed man who had been following us at the supermarket a few days earlier. Merrick had indeed found this place. I pulled up the surveillance records from the past few days and discovered this individual had appeared 4 times at different intervals, each time lingering for about half an hour, meticulously documenting the safe house's layout and defensive measures. It seems our guest is quite interested, I sneered as I saved these video evidences. Merrick was clearly eyeing the safe house, planning to seize this well-equipped shelter after the apocalypse. That night, after Nora fell asleep, I carefully reviewed all the surveillance footage. Merrick's reconnaissance was methodical. He always checked the height of the walls, the positions of the cameras, the structure of the gate. Typical casing behavior. What alarmed me most was the footage from yesterday afternoon, which showed he had brought another person with him. The two were pointing at my house and seemed to be discussing some sort of plan. Thinking of stealing my safe house, I murmured to myself, well, give it a try. I turned on my computer and began designing a special welcome ceremony. Since Merrick wanted my safe house, I might as well give him a chance to get close to it. Early the next morning, I deliberately left the safe house with Nora and several suitcases within view of the surveillance cameras, making it look like we were going on a long trip. In reality, we just went to another safe house at the foot of the mountain, a backup location I had purchased under another identity, one even Detective Ridge didn't know about. Mom, aren't we going home? Nora asked, confused. Just for now, sweetheart. I reassured her, we're playing a game of hide and seek, remember, in the small outpost. I remotely monitored the safe house through my phone. Sure enough, around 3 p.m., Merrick appeared at the perimeter of the safe house with two others. They were dressed in electric company uniforms, pretending to be maintenance workers. Too cliché. I shook my head, watching them clumsily attempt to pry open the side door. I had set up a few surprises around the safe house beforehand. When one of Merrick's accomplices stepped onto the front lawn, a sudden jet of water sprayed from underground, drenching him completely. "What the hell?" the man yelled. Stumbling backward, Merrick frowned as he inspected, unaware that he had triggered another mechanism. Hidden speakers on the wall suddenly blared a piercing alarm while spewing red smoke. From a distance, it looked like a small explosion had occurred. The three panicked and fled in disarray, with one of them even taking a clumsy tumble. I couldn't help but laugh. "This was just the appetizer. Mom, what are you laughing at?" Nora asked curiously, leaning in. "Just thinking of something happy," I replied, putting away my phone and kissing her forehead. "Are you hungry? Let's have lunch." 3 days later, after confirming that Merrick and his gang wouldn't dare harass us for the time being, we returned to the safe house. As soon as we entered, I noticed signs of an attempted break-in through the basement vent, fresh pry marks on the metal grating. They really came, I muttered, inspecting the trap inside the vent, a mixture of paint cans and lubricant that would send anyone crawling in sliding and covered in bright colors. The trap was untouched, meaning they hadn't succeeded in getting inside. It seemed Merrick was dead set on taking over my safe house. Oddly enough, this reassured me. It meant he still hadn't realized the impending disaster. Otherwise, he'd be busy preparing his own shelter instead of fixating on mine. Over the next 2 weeks, I focused on training Nora to adapt to post-apocalyptic life. I taught her basic safety rules, simple self-defense techniques, and how to sense danger without relying on her abilities. Surprisingly, Nora learned quickly, especially her intuition for danger, which had become almost instinctive. "Mom, why do we have to learn all this?" Nora asked me, looking up after a day of training. I crouched down to meet her eyes. "Because soon, the world outside will become very dangerous. I want to make sure that no matter what happens, you can protect yourself, like in my dreams." "Yes, sweetheart, just like in your dreams." Nora suddenly threw herself into my arms, her little arms tightly wrapping around my neck. "But as long as I'm with Mommy, I'm not afraid." My eyes instantly welled up with tears. "In my past life, I died alone at the hands of my own family, but in this life, I have the most precious companion. No matter how cruel the apocalypse may be, I will protect this child." 1 week before the apocalypse, I completed the final preparations. Every system in the safe house had been tested repeatedly, and the supplies were enough to sustain 2 people for over 5 years. All weapons were placed within easy reach, and the surveillance system operated 24/7. I even prepared a special surprise package for Merrick. If he really comes knocking after the apocalypse, he'll surely love the special gift I've prepared for him. Starting today, we won't go outside anymore, I told Nora during dinner, until the world outside becomes safe again." Nora nodded and suddenly said, "It's going to rain soon." I paused, confused. The weather forecast didn't mention rain, not ordinary rain. Nora's eyes grew slightly hazy, red, burning. "It starts tomorrow night." I froze all over. Tomorrow night. That's 3 days earlier than in the previous life. But Nora's premonitions have never been wrong. "Are you sure it's tomorrow?" Nora nodded. I heard the voice. It was saying prepare. I immediately got up to check the seals on all the doors and windows, making sure the rainwater filtration system was functioning properly. If Nora was right, we only had a little over 30 hours of peace left. That night, I lay in bed tossing and turning. By this time tomorrow, the world would begin to collapse, and I had already done all I could to prepare. Scenes from my rebirth flashed through my mind, gathering evidence for the divorce, searching for Nora, building the safe house. Each step had been perilous yet precise. Now, the test was about to begin. I quietly entered Nora's room. She turned over in her sleep, her small face looking especially peaceful under the nightlight. Did this child, gifted with foresight, know what role she would play in the apocalypse? Outside the window, the moonlight was like water, the stars dazzling. This was the calm before the storm, the last moment of peace before the end. I drew the blackout curtains and returned to my bedroom. Tomorrow, the world would never be the same again, and Nora and I would welcome this catastrophe from within our safe fortress. Merrick, Vesper, all those who have hurt me, this time, it's your turn to struggle in the inferno of the apocalypse. Nora's prophecy was terrifyingly accurate. That evening, as I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, I suddenly heard Nora scream from the living room, "Mom, it's coming." I dropped the kitchen knife and rushed into the living room, where Nora stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her little finger pointing outside. Following her gaze, I saw the distant sky tinged with an eerie orange-red hue, like the afterglow of sunset but more murky and ominous. "So soon," I muttered to myself, immediately activating the safe house's full lockdown protocol. Amid the hum of electric motors, acid-resistant metal shutters slowly descended to cover all the windows. The ventilation system switched to internal circulation mode. The solar panels automatically tilted to their maximum protective angle. Within just 3 minutes, the safe house transformed from an ordinary villa into an impenetrable fortress. "Mommy, the sky is crying," Nora whispered, her voice barely audible as she pressed against the glass. "It's bleeding." I walked over and hugged her, feeling her small body trembling slightly. Outside the window, the first red raindrop hit the bulletproof glass, leaving a murky red mark before being wiped away by the automatic cleaning system. Then came the second, the third. In the blink of an eye, a torrential downpour fell from the sky, as if the entire world had been submerged in blood. The raindrops struck the ground with faint sizzling sounds, emitting wisps of pale smoke. "Don't look." I gently pulled Nora away from the window, only to find her staring unblinkingly at the scene outside, her pupils slightly dilated as if she had entered some kind of trance. "Nora, sweetheart." I lightly patted her cheek, but there was no response. Suddenly, she spoke, but her voice wasn't the usual childish tone. It carried an eerie, ethereal quality. "On the first day, the rain will burn. On the second day, breathing will hurt. On the third day, the eyes will deceive." "Nora." I shook her vigorously, and only then did she blink as if waking from a dream, looking at me in confusion. "Mom, what's wrong?" "You just said something strange." I hesitated, unsure whether to tell her. Nora tilted her head and thought for a moment. "I can't remember clearly. I just felt like there were many voices talking." She touched her throat. "My throat is so dry." I quickly poured her a glass of water while turning on the TV. Major news channels were urgently reporting on this sudden red rain. The National Weather Service stated that this abnormal precipitation phenomenon might be related to the recent volcanic ash over the Pacific Ocean. Emergency notice: citizens are advised to avoid contact with the red rainwater as preliminary reports indicated is weakly acidic. Multiple cities report traffic chaos, with power outages in some areas. I switched to local news, where familiar city streets were shown with panicked pedestrians scrambling for shelter from the rain. Several umbrella-less pedestrians were already showing abnormalities, their skin turning red and blistering where the raindrops touched, like mild burns. "Mom, will those people die?" Nora whispered. "No." I told a white lie, "but they'll be very uncomfortable. Actually, I know this is just the beginning." The acid rain on the first day was relatively mild, only causing skin burns. The rain on the second day would mix with toxic substances in the atmosphere, harming the respiratory system. By the third day, the rainwater would induce hallucinations, marking the true beginning of the apocalypse's horror. I turned off the TV, not wanting Nora to see more terrifying images. Instead, I switched on the safe house's surveillance system to check the surroundings. The front door camera showed that the rain had already formed a layer of red puddles on the ground, bubbling slightly. On the distant mountain road, a car lost control, skidded off the road, and crashed into a utility pole. The driver staggered out, only to be immediately drenched by the rain, screaming in agony. "Mom." Nora leaned against me. "I'm scared." "Don't be afraid, sweetheart." I held her tightly. "We're very safe here. Remember what Mommy told you. Our house is specially made. The rain can't get in." Nora nodded, but her little hand still clung tightly to the corner of my clothes. By 8 in the evening, the rain showed no sign of letting up. I made Nora's favorite cheesy pasta, but she only took a few bites before putting down her fork. "Not hungry?" I asked. Nora shook her head. "My stomach feels off." She pointed to her chest. "It feels heavy here." I touched her forehead. No fever, but her complexion was indeed poor. Had her precognitive abilities drained too much energy, or was it from seeing too many terrifying visions? After coaxing Nora to sleep, I returned to the living room to continue monitoring the situation outside. My phone had lost signal, and the internet was intermittent. Social media was flooded with panic. Someone had posted photos of their skin burned by the rain. Others claimed to have seen the rain eating away the paint on cars left outdoors. There were even rumors that the rain in some areas had turned into strong acid. I switched to the safe house's surveillance feed, zooming in to check the surroundings. The residential area 3 kilometers away was brightly lit but in complete chaos. Several figures were running through the rain, seemingly engaged in some kind of rescue or evacuation. Suddenly, a familiar figure burst into the frame. I held my breath and zoomed in. It was Marek. He was holding an umbrella, cradling Jasper in his arms, with Vesper and Marek's mom leaning on a cane, following behind. The group scrambled toward the underground garage of the residential complex, looking utterly disheveled. Clearly, they were completely unprepared. I smirked as I watched Marek slip on the wet ground, nearly dropping Jasper. Vesper screamed and reached up to grab him, only to have her own umbrella blown away by the wind, leaving her drenched and wailing in the rain. Serves them right. But my satisfaction quickly turned to alarm. The Emerald residential complex, where Marek's family lived, was only 3 kilometers from my safe house. If they managed to survive the initial chaos, they might very well remember the refuge of their ex-wife. I pulled up the surveillance footage from Marek's reconnaissance a few days ago, repeatedly studying his patterns of movement. Which parts of the safe house did he focus on? Where did he attempt to breach? This would help me predict what strategy he might use next time. At 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by a sharp alarm. The safe house's intrusion detection system had been triggered, but not from the ground, it was from the air. I rushed to the surveillance screen and saw a small drone hovering above the safe house. The rain had eased but was still heavy enough to damage exposed electronics. Who would send a drone out in this weather? The drone circled the safe house 3 times, seemingly searching for an entry point or weakness. Finally, it stopped outside Nora's bedroom window and remained motionless. I immediately grabbed the prepared jammer, aimed it at the drone, and pressed the button. After a piercing burst of electromagnetic noise, the drone wobbled a few times before spiraling out of control and crashing in the front yard. Braving the rain, I put on my protective suit and gas mask before heading out to inspect the drone. It was shattered into pieces, but I could still tell it was a commercial model with a range of no more than 5 kilometers. That meant the operator was nearby. What was more unsettling was the small note tied to the drone. "We know you're inside." There was no signature, but I recognized the handwriting. It was Marek's, back inside the house. I immediately checked all the defense systems. Marek knew the location of the safe house, and now he had confirmed we were indeed inside. He would definitely take action. The question was when and how. Early the next morning, the rain grew heavier. The water was no longer dark red but had turned a murky orange-yellow, and the sizzling sound it made upon hitting the protective panels became even more pronounced. The acidic smell in the air was faintly detectable even through the filtration system. Nora seemed uneasy after waking up. "Mom, we can't open the windows today. The air outside makes people cough." "We won't open them," I assured her. "The air purification system is running all the time." After breakfast, I decided to give Nora a special apocalypse lesson. "Sweetheart, starting today, the world has become different," I explained in terms she could understand. "Many people outside will get sick and become dangerous. We'll have to live here for a long time until it's safe outside again." Nora nodded seriously, like hibernating bears. "Pretty much," I smiled, "but bears don't learn while they sleep." "We will. Mommy will teach you lots of useful things." "Okay." Nora's eyes lit up. "Like superhero training." "Exactly, just like that." Over the next few days, we established a simple yet fulfilling daily routine. Mornings were dedicated to learning basic knowledge, reading, writing, and simple arithmetic. Afternoons were survival skills time, where I taught Nora how to recognize dangers, use basic tools, and apply simple first aid. Evenings were for relaxation, watching movies or playing games. Nora learned quickly, especially her ability to sense danger, which far surpassed that of ordinary people. Once, she suddenly insisted on checking the water storage system, and we actually discovered a filter that was about to fail. When asked how she knew, she simply said, "A voice in my head told me." On the 5th night, Nora woke up from a nightmare, screaming, "The bad people are coming." I immediately checked the surveillance and, sure enough, spotted a group of figures on the mountain road about a kilometer away from the safe house. Zooming in, I recognized Marek leading the group, followed by 5 or 6 men, all wearing rudimentary protective gear. They were heading toward the safe house. I quickly activated all defensive measures, electrifying the walls, setting traps, and preparing weapons. Strangely, though, the group stopped about 500 meters from the safe house, seemingly arguing about something. By reading their lips, I roughly understood their plan. Marek wanted to launch a nighttime attack on the safe house, but his companions were more concerned about the dangers of the acid rain. In the end, they decided to retreat to the neighborhood and wait for the rain to stop before making their move. The crisis has been temporarily averted, but I know this is just the beginning. Marek won't give up easily, especially in this apocalyptic world where a safe house like this is more precious than gold. I pulled up the surveillance footage of Emerald Community to check on Marek and his group's living conditions. The neighborhood in the footage was almost unrecognizable. Piles of garbage towered like mountains, several corpses were haphazardly stacked in corners, and most windows were boarded up with wooden planks. A group of people had set up temporary tents in the central garden, forming what they called a self-rescue committee. My blood ran cold. This self-rescue committee was the very organization that had eventually turned into a cannibalistic group in my past life. They started out genuinely helping each other, but as food shortages worsened, they gradually bared their fangs, and now Marek was mixed up with them. In the surveillance footage, Marek and his group returned to the residential area. A middle-aged man wearing glasses approached them, enthusiastically patting Marek on the shoulder. I remember this person, Silas, the leader of the self-salvation committee in my past life. Outwardly a retired teacher, he was actually an extreme egoist. Nora had somehow appeared behind me, her small hand gripping my arm tightly. "Mom, that person is so dark," she said. "Which person?" I asked. Nora pointed at Silas on the screen. "His body is all black, like shadows are eating him." I froze all over. Could Nora not only foresee danger but also see the dark side of human nature? "Sweetie, can you see colors on people?" Nora nodded. "Sometimes. Good people are bright. Bad people are dark." She suddenly pointed to a young woman in another frame. "That sister is yellow, like the sun." I carefully observed the woman and recognized her as the famously kind-hearted nurse in the neighborhood, who had secretly delivered medicine to neighbors in her past life and was eventually executed by the committee. Nora's abilities are even more powerful than I imagined. It's not just foreseeing physical dangers, but also an intuitive judgment of the good and evil in human nature. "Mom, more bad people will come for us soon." Nora trembled in my arms, her voice shaking. "They're very hungry, hungry enough to devour anything." I held her tighter, gazing out the window at the relentless acid rain still pouring down. The apocalypse had only just begun, and we had already become the fat sheep among a pack of starving wolves. But this time, this sheep has sharp horns and deadly fangs. Nora's prophecy came true once again, on the morning after 2 weeks of continuous red rain. I woke up to find the temperature inside the safe house much lower than usual. Checking the surveillance screen, the outside world had transformed into a frozen wasteland. After the acid rain, temperatures had plummeted by over 30 degrees overnight, reaching minus 20 degrees Celsius. "Mom, it's so cold." Nora huddled in a blanket, her little face pale from the chill. I immediately turned up the indoor temperature and added a down jacket for her. The safe house's insulation system was functioning normally, but the extreme cold had still brought the indoor temperature below 15 degrees. "Baby, today we're going to dress like polar bears." I tried to lighten the mood, but my eyes remained fixed on the surveillance screen. The scene outside was like something from an apocalyptic movie: trees encased in ice, as fragile as crystal sculptures, roads covered in a thick layer of ice, with abandoned cars turned into frozen lumps. The distant neighborhood was eerily quiet, without a wisp of smoke from chimneys. Most unsettling were the corpses. Those who hadn't found shelter in time had turned into ice sculptures in the sudden, extreme cold, frozen in their final moments, some curled up in corners, others reaching out as if begging for help, and mothers still clutching their children tightly. I looked away, my throat tight. I had lived through this in my past life, but seeing it again still felt like a knife twisting in my heart. "Mommy, are they sleeping?" Nora pointed at a curled-up figure on the screen and asked. I hesitated for a moment before deciding to tell the truth. "No, sweetheart, they're dead. The temperature outside is too low for the human body to endure." Nora was silent for a while, then said, "We won't die because Mommy prepared a warm house." "Yes." I held her tightly. "We made thorough preparations." But I knew the real test had only just begun. The extreme cold would last for an entire month, the harshest period of the apocalypse's first phase. Those unprepared would perish in droves during this time, and the survivors would become more dangerous than the cold itself. Sure enough, that afternoon, the surveillance alarm sounded from the direction of Emerald Community. A group of figures was struggling toward the safe house. Zooming in, I recognized Merrick at the front, followed by Vesper, Marek's mom, and 3 unfamiliar men. They were bundled in thick clothing, but it was clearly inadequate against such low temperatures. "They're here," I murmured, immediately activating the first-level defense measures. Nora grabbed my arm. "Mom, that bad man has something black moving on him." I carefully looked at the screen. Marek's image was somewhat blurry, but I could indeed see an unnatural shadow enveloping him, especially when he moved. The shadow writhed like a living thing. "What kind of black thing?" I asked. Nora scrunched up her little face. Like bugs, but big. They were crawling under his skin." She shuddered. "So gross." My heart tightened. Had Merrick already mutated? In my past life, some people did undergo certain mutations under extreme conditions, but that usually didn't happen until 3 months into the apocalypse. Why was the mutation progressing so quickly this time? No time to think further. The intruders are already approaching the wall. I told Nora to stay in the safe room, a reinforced space at the center of the house, then armed myself fully and headed to the surveillance room. Merrick and his crew stopped outside the wall, seemingly discussing tactics. Through the microphones hidden in the outer walls, I overheard their conversation. The electric fence should be down by now, in this weather." An unfamiliar man said, "Don't get careless." Marek's voice was hoarse, much deeper than I remembered. "That bitch is well prepared. I'm freezing to death." Marek's mom's voice trembled. "Merrick, maybe we should go back." "Shut up," Merrick snapped sharply. "Going back means waiting to die. The food in the neighborhood is all gone." Silas and his gang started eating. He suddenly stopped, as if realizing he'd said too much. Vesper chimed in, her voice shrill. There's plenty of food and medicine here. That bitch doesn't deserve to hoard it all, I sneered. Sure enough, the self-rescue committee in the neighborhood had turned into a cannibalistic gang, and Marek's family, desperate and with no way out, had decided to come rob my safe house. Marek pulled a tool from his backpack and began prying open the maintenance panel on the wall. This was exactly the attack point I had anticipated, and precisely where I had set my carefully designed trap. 3, 2, 1. I silently counted down before pressing the remote button. With a loud bang, the maintenance panel suddenly flew open, releasing a massive cloud of red powder. Marek, standing closest, took the full brunt of it and immediately let out a howl of pain. It was my special blend of chili powder mixed with chemical irritants, designed to cause intense burning upon contact with skin. My eyes, I can't see. One of his accomplices clutched his face and rolled on the ground in agony. Although Marek was also sprayed, surprisingly, he quickly stood up, wiped his face, and continued forward. The chili powder seemed to have little effect on him. This wasn't normal. Chargin, kill that bitch, he roared, his voice no longer human but more like the growl of some beast. I immediately activated the second line of defense, the automatic sprinkler system on the walls. In temperatures of minus 20 degrees, the water would freeze instantly upon contact with human skin, forming a deadly layer of ice. The mist sprayed out, and several invaders were instantly covered in frost, screaming as they fell, but Marek merely shook it off and kept advancing. Even more terrifying, Vesper also displayed abnormal resistance. Though her movements slowed, she was still moving. Mom, the roof, Nora's voice came through the intercom, filled with panic. Someone's climbing up from the back. I immediately switched to the rooftop camera and saw a dark figure scaling the back of the house. It was Evander, the veteran I'd briefly met at the building materials market. What was he doing here? Evander moved with swift, professional precision, quickly reaching the rooftop entrance. To my shock, instead of trying to break in, he pulled a small device from his backpack, attached it to the door, and swiftly retreated. The next second, the surveillance screen flickered, and the images of Marek's gang suddenly became distorted. It was a signal jammer. Evander wasn't attacking the safe house, he was helping me stop the intruders. But there was no time to ponder this mystery. Marek had already breached the wall and reached the front door of the main house, wielding a fire axe. He was frantically hacking at the bulletproof door. Luna, I know you're in there. His voice twisted unnaturally. Open the door, or when I find your daughter, I'll make her wish she was dead. I tightened my grip on the crossbow, aiming at Marek's image on the surveillance screen. His face, dear God, his face was transforming. Something writhed beneath his skin. His eyes turned an unnatural grayish-white, and his mouth split open at an impossible angle, revealing rows of bone-white teeth. This was no longer human, at least, not entirely. Just as I was about to take the shot, a loud crash suddenly came from the roof. Marek was also stunned and looked up. The surveillance footage showed that Evander had somehow circled to the front yard and jumped down from above, landing right behind Marek. The two engaged in a fierce fight. Evander was agile and ruthless, clearly professionally trained, but Marek's strength was terrifying, throwing Evander off several times. Even more horrifying was that he seemed to feel no pain, even when stabbed with a dagger. He didn't bleed. Mommy, that uncle is a good person, Nora suddenly said. He's blue. I recalled Nora saying earlier that good people were shiny and bad people were dark. It seemed Evander was trustworthy in her eyes. In the midst of the fight, Evander finally seized an opportunity, delivering a precise knife hand strike to Marek's neck. A normal person would have been knocked out instantly, but Marek only staggered before turning around and punching Evander, sending him flying. Evander crashed into the perimeter wall, spitting out blood. Yet he quickly got back up and assumed a defensive stance. By then, Vesper and the others had also recovered and began surrounding Evander. The situation was critical. I could no longer stand by and do nothing. I pressed the final button, the high-voltage electric fence on the wall. Due to Evander's jammer, the fence couldn't operate at full power, but it was enough to serve as a deterrent. The buzzing of the electricity made the intruders hesitate. Marek glared viciously at the safe house, then glanced at the injured Evander before finally signaling a retreat. Let's go, he roared. But this isn't over, Luna. I'll be back, with more people. Next time, I'll eat that little bastard right in front of you. They staggered away, leaving only Evander behind, clutching his injured ribs and breathing with difficulty. I was caught in a dilemma, letting a stranger into the safe house, in this apocalyptic world, that was practically suicide, but this man had just saved us. Mom, Nora appeared beside me at some point. That uncle is hurt, he's in pain, but there's no black in his heart, only blue and a little silver, like the watch Dad used to wear. Nora struggled to describe it, shiny, hard, but the good kind of hard. I understood what she meant, firm, upright, after much hesitation. I made my decision. Listen, sweetheart, I crouched down to meet Xiaoshu at eye level. Mommy is going to bring that uncle inside, but he can only stay in the outer area. You must stay in the safe room, lock the door, and absolutely do not open it unless you hear Mommy's voice. Understand? Nora nodded earnestly, fully armed with a crossbow in hand, a pistol and dagger at my waist. I opened the outer door of the safe house. Evander was still leaning against the fence when he saw me come out. He forced a weak smile. Lady from the building materials market, he said hoarsely. It seems my advice was helpful. I maintained a cautious distance. Who are you? Why did you help me? Evander, former special forces. He struggled to stand up. As for why I helped you, maybe because you looked like the only one who was prepared. How did you find this place? I live in a cabin over the mountain. He pointed in that direction. Saw that group heading this way. Heard them say they were going to kill a woman and child. He coughed up blood. Couldn't just stand by. I studied him carefully. Evander was in bad shape, at least 2 broken ribs, a dislocated left arm, and his face covered in bruises, but his eyes were clear and steady, without that madness Merrick had. Nora said he has no black. Is that trustworthy, Mom? Nora's voice came through the intercom. Let him in. He's really in pain. And he has a big ship in his dream. It's very important. Evander raised an eyebrow. Your daughter. I nodded and made a decision. You can come in, but you must submit to a search and surveillance. If you dare to make any suspicious moves, I won't hesitate to kill you. Reasonable. Evander straightened up with effort and gave me a military salute. Thank you for taking me in, sir. I led him into the outer perimeter of the safe house. A garage converted into a space isolated from the main living area. With independent ventilation systems and entry points, it had basic living facilities but no access to the main house. Take off your outer clothes, I ordered, scanning him with a detector for any listening devices or weapons. Evander complied, removing his tattered coat and bulletproof vest to reveal a muscular torso covered in scars. The most prominent was a vicious knife scar running from his right shoulder to his left abdomen, along with several circular marks that appeared to be gunshot wounds, souvenirs from Afghanistan and Syria. He noticed my gaze and said casually, the inspection was complete, apart from a dagger and a pistol, with no bullets left. He had no other weapons. I handed him a set of clean clothes and a medical kit. Tend to your wounds yourself. There are surveillance cameras here. Don't do anything foolish. Evander nodded and began expertly setting his bones and bandaging himself. I noticed his movements were extremely professional, clearly the result of rigorous medical training. You don't ask why I helped you, he suddenly asked. My daughter said you're a good person, I replied briefly, and you did save us. Your daughter, does she have special abilities? Evander asked keenly. My heart tightened. Was it that obvious? Why do you ask? At the building materials market that time, she seemed to foresee the robbery, Evander said while bandaging, just now. You used her words to judge whether I was trustworthy. Plus, you were able to make such thorough preparations before the apocalypse. He looked up and met my eyes directly. You knew what would happen, and she can perceive even more. This man's observational skills are terrifying. I instinctively reached for the dagger at my waist. Relax. Evander raised his hands. I mean no harm. In this world now, any advantage is worth cherishing. Your daughter's ability might be the key to humanity's survival. His words reminded me of the big ship Nora had described. What did that mean? You've said enough. I cut him off. Rest now. We'll talk tomorrow. Back in the main house, I held Nora tightly. Her abilities were growing stronger. Not only could she sense danger in human nature, but she could also catch glimpses of the future. Was this a blessing or a curse? Outside the window, the blizzard grew fiercer. The thermometer showing it had already dropped to -25 degrees. Merrick and his gang had retreated for now, but I knew they'd be back. And Evander, this sudden variable, was he friend or foe? In this apocalyptic world, trust is like cracks on ice, beautiful yet deadly, but sometimes, for survival, we have no choice but to take the risk and step onto it. Evander's wounds were healing at an astonishingly rapid pace. In just 3 days, injuries that would have kept an ordinary person bedridden for 2 weeks had mostly healed. At that moment, he was crouched in a corner of the outer area, repairing the backup generator for the safe house. I observed his every move through the surveillance screen, my finger lightly resting on the button of the remote-controlled shock collar, the insurance I had insisted he wear. MS Luna. Evander suddenly looked up, staring directly into the camera as if he could see my eyes through the lens. There's an issue with the fuel line of this generator. I suggest switching to biodiesel. The pre-acid rain gasoline stockpile won't last much longer. I pressed the talk button. How did you know I have a biodiesel reserve? Just a guess. He wiped the grease off his hands. Someone as thorough as you would definitely consider the long-term storage of fuel. Biodiesel is more stable and has a longer shelf life. He was right. The underground storage of the safe house did contain a large quantity of biodiesel, enough to keep the generator running for over 2 years, but I didn't like his insight. It was too sharp, as if he could see through every decision I made. Mom, Nora tugged at my sleeve. Uncle Evander is telling the truth. I can feel he's not lying. I looked down at my daughter. Ever since Evander arrived at the perimeter of the safe house, Nora had become unusually attentive to him, asking multiple times a day, "Is Uncle Evander feeling better today?" At first, I wondered if this had something to do with Evander's abilities, but Nora insisted it was just because he had pretty colors on him. "Sweetie, could you go check the inventory in the storage room?" I sent Nora away, then opened the communication channel with Evander. "We need to talk." Evander set down his tools and sat up straight. "I'm all ears." "Who are you? Really just a passing veteran who happened to help?" I asked bluntly. "Don't tell me it's a coincidence. I don't buy it." Evander was silent for a moment before pulling a waterproof bag from his pocket containing several folded sheets of paper. "After seeing this, you might understand a bit more." I activated the peripheral item transfer system, a small airlock pipeline installed in the wall. Evander placed the waterproof bag inside, and I received it immediately on my end. Unfolding the paper, I found a hand-drawn map detailing the terrain and structures within a 20-kilometer radius. 5 locations were marked with red circles, one of which was my safe house. Next to each red circle was a brief assessment: abundant supplies, Defense A, concealed location, Defense B+. Beside my safe house, it read, extreme defense, suspected precognition. What is this? My fingers moved toward the pistol at my waist. An assessment of doomsday shelters. Evander's voice was surprisingly calm. "I'm one of the members of the ARC project. I have never heard of any ARC project. In the apocalypse of my previous life, various organizations and groups sprang up like mushrooms only to disappear, but this name doesn't ring a bell." "Explain clearly," I said coldly. Evander took a deep breath. 3 years ago, a group of scientists predicted a potential global catastrophe. The government deemed the evidence insufficient but secretly approved a small-scale contingency plan, selecting suitable locations and personnel to establish hidden shelters. I was assigned to assess civilian preparedness in this region. My mind raced. If what he said was true, then the government had known the apocalypse was coming, but why was there no public warning? Why me? "Actually, you weren't on the initial list." Evander smiled. "It was your trip to the building materials market that caught my attention. Ordinary people don't shop like that unless they know what's coming." Later, when I investigated further, I found your preparations were unbelievably thorough, as if you'd been given the script in advance. Cold sweat broke out in my palms. Rebirth was my absolute secret. No one could ever know, so you've been watching me all along. Protective observation, Evander corrected, until Merrick and his crew showed up. That's when I decided to step in. I studied the map carefully and noticed one of the marked locations had a distinctive shape, a long oval, labeled Arc 7, the big ship Nora mentioned in her dream. "What's this?" I pointed at the marking. Evander's expression grew complicated. "Arc 7, an underground shelter designed for 500 people. In theory, it should have been activated by now. Theoretically, the day before the acid rain came, I received orders to report to Site 7. Evander's voice grew somber, but en route, I got one last encrypted message. "Site 7 fallen. Execute Plan B." Fallen. What does that mean? Don't know. Communications went dark after that. Evander raised his head, his gaze sharp, but I suspect some kind of mutation occurred there, just like what happened to Merrick. The mention of Merrick sent a chill down my spine, the inhuman strength and eerie behavior he displayed that day. "Do you know what happened to Merrick?" I asked urgently. Evander shook his head. "Not sure, but I have a guess. Do you know extreme environments can trigger rapid genetic mutations in humans, like a forced evolution?" I recalled some rumors from my past life about the mutations of cannibals, who not only ate people but also underwent terrifying physical changes, but those were things that happened half a year after the apocalypse. Why was Marek's mutation so rapid? "Mom." Nora suddenly came running back from the storage room, her little face pale. "The door, there's a sound behind the storage room door." I immediately grabbed my weapon and rushed to the storage room. That's where we keep most of our food and medicine. We can't afford any mishaps. The storage room door was tightly shut, and everything seemed normal on the surface. But when I pressed my ear against the door, I could indeed hear faint scratching sounds, like nails scraping against metal. "Step back." I motioned for Nora to move to a safe distance, then yanked the door open. The storage room was empty, with only neatly arranged shelves and supplies. I carefully inspected every corner, finding no signs of intrusion, but when I checked the innermost wall, I noticed the ventilation duct cover was slightly loose, with fresh scratches along its edges. "Evander," I called over the radio, "any anomalies in the ventilation system in the outer area?" "Negative," he replied immediately. "All readings are normal. What's wrong? We have signs of intrusion here." I hesitated before making a decision. I need you to come in and check, but remember, any suspicious movement, understood, he replied tersely. I'll keep my hands visible. 5 minutes later, Evander stood in the storage room wearing the shock collar, carefully inspecting the ventilation duct. Nora hid behind me but peeked out curiously to observe him. Look here, Evander pointed to the inner wall of the duct. These scratches are fresh, and, he leaned in to sniff, there's a foul smell. I handed him a flashlight. The beam shone deep into the duct, faintly revealing a few strands of black hair, or some kind of fiber. Further in, suspicious dark red stains were smeared on the duct walls. Not human, Evander suddenly said. Human nails couldn't leave marks like these. Look at the spacing and depth. It's more like some kind of large rodent. Rats, I frowned. But how could rats? Mom, Nora screamed, pointing into the depths of the pipe. Black things, they're coming again. Evander and I turned toward the pipe simultaneously but saw nothing, yet a distinct rustling sound was clearly approaching from deep within the pipe, growing louder. Seal it. Evander reacted swiftly, grabbing a nearby metal plate to block the pipe opening. We need to weld it shut. I immediately ran to fetch the tools. 10 minutes later, the ventilation duct was completely welded shut, whatever was inside. It couldn't get in now. This explains some anomalies I noticed earlier, Evander said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Your surveillance system has several blind spots, precisely at the bends of the ventilation ducts. I was planning to tell you today. I stared at the sealed pipe, my heartbeat still unsteady. In this post-apocalyptic world, it's not just humans that might have mutated. Uncle Evander has a red light on his back, Nora suddenly said. Both Evander and I were stunned. What red light, sweetheart? I asked softly. Nora timidly pointed at Evander's nape. There. It's blinking, like a little star, but only I can see it. Evander's expression shifted from confusion to shock, then settled into a strange calm. The seventh cervical vertebra position, Nora nodded. Can you describe that red light? Evander's voice was unusually calm, tiny, sometimes on and sometimes off. Nora struggled to describe it. Now it's blinking a bit faster. As if it knows I've spotted it. Evander slowly raised his hands. Miss Luna, I think you need to see this. He turned around, pulled down his collar, and exposed the back of his neck. To the naked eye, there was only normal skin, but when I shone an ultraviolet light on it, a tiny scar became visible, a perfect circle with unnaturally neat edges, like the mark of a surgical implant. What is this? My voice tightened. A tracker, or a monitoring device, Evander said with surprising calmness. Every member of the ARC project gets one implanted upon joining. Officially, it's for emergency location and rescue, but Nora said it was flashing, which means it's still operational. Evander turned around. Someone is receiving the signal. This discovery sent a chill down my spine. If someone was tracking Evander's signal, then the location of our safe house might already be compromised. We need to remove it immediately. I made the decision. Evander shook his head. It's connected to the central nervous system. Forcibly removing it could lead to paralysis or death. And, he gave a bitter smile, if anyone from the ARC project is still alive, they might be the key to fighting this disaster. I was caught in a dilemma. Keeping this device meant risks, but Evander's words made sense. Mom, the red light turned green, Nora suddenly said. No, now it's blue. How strange. Just then, the monitoring alarm sounded. I rushed to the screen and saw over a dozen red dots moving from the direction of Emerald Community. Zooming in, the one leading the group was unmistakably Merrick. His appearance was even more bizarre. His skin had taken on an unhealthy grayish-white hue, his limbs twisted at unnatural angles, yet he moved with alarming speed. What's even more terrifying is that the crowd following him also showed varying degrees of mutation. Some had fingers turned into sharp claws. Others had mouths split open to their ears, and some had strange fleshy tumors bulging from their backs. 5, they're coming, I muttered. Evander quickly shifted into combat mode. How many? At least 15, all with varying degrees of mutation. I turned to Nora. Sweetheart, go to the safe room. No, Nora remained rooted to the spot, her eyes fixed on the screen. They're not the worst. What do you mean? There's something darker behind them. Nora's voice trembled, like a walking shadow. It's controlling them. I zoomed in on the surveillance footage and finally spotted a blurry figure at the very end of the line, taller than the others, entirely wrapped in black fabric, its face indistinguishable, but whenever it moved, the mutated beings would automatically make way, as if utterly terrified. Silas, Evander suddenly said, judging by the gait and build, it should be him. The leader of the self-rescue committee in Emerald Community. That retired teacher who organized a cannibal group in the previous life. Mom, he's smiling. Nora pointed at the shadowy figure. Though I can't see his face, I know he's smiling. And he can see us. As if confirming Nora's words, the shadowy figure suddenly looked up, staring directly at the camera. Though the features were indistinct, I could feel a chilling gaze piercing through the screen, stabbing straight into my heart. Prepare for battle, I said tersely. Swiftly activating all defense systems, Evander checked the weapons. I need to access the main control room. Their primary target will be the power system. I hesitated, led Evander into the living quarters. The risk was too great, but without his expertise, we might not survive this assault. Mom, Nora gently took my hand. Uncle Evander can be trusted. The blue in his heart, it's very bright. I looked into my daughter's eyes, then turned to Evander. He stood there with a resolute gaze, waiting for my decision. Come with me, I finally said, but remember, I know. Evander nodded. Any suspicious moves? We quickly entered the control room. Evander immediately began inspecting the circuits and surveillance systems, pointing out several vulnerabilities I had previously overlooked. They'll reach the wall in 3 minutes, Evander said, staring at the monitor. We need a plan. I already have one. I pulled up the 3D model of the safe house. Let them in. Evander raised an eyebrow. Explain. The safe house has 3 layers of defense. I pointed at the model. First layer is the wall and perimeter traps. Second is the building's own defenses. Third is the underground bunker. I'll let them breach the first layer, then eliminate them at the second. The risk is enormous, but the rewards are even greater. I analyzed calmly. If we just repel them, more will come next time. I need to take out Merrick and Silas in one go. Evander pondered for a moment, then suddenly smiled. I like this plan, but it needs some adjustments. We quickly refined the details. Evander proposed several ingenious trap setups, utilizing the structural features of the safe house to create kill zones. I was responsible for weapons and the escape route. Nora sat quietly in the corner, her eyes closed, as if listening to something. Suddenly, she spoke. They've split up. 3 are circling around the back. The darkest one has stopped under the big tree. What is he waiting for? Evander and I exchanged a glance. Nora's ability was predicting the enemy's movements in real time. The 3 at the back are faint. Evander immediately adjusted the surveillance. The main force is still at the front. Silas is waiting. For what? For us to reveal our firing positions. It dawned on me. Cunning old fox. We quickly adjusted our strategy, preparing to face this life-or-death battle. Outside the window, the snowstorm grew fiercer, but the mutants seemed unaffected. Rapidly closing in, the cruelest law of the apocalypse became crystal clear at this moment. It's either you or me, and this time, I won't hesitate. Let's prepare to welcome our guests. I checked my rifle and chambered around. In the blizzard, dark figures surged forward like a tide. I watched the approaching mutants through the surveillance screen, my fingers lightly tapping on the control panel. Merrick was leading the charge, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. Running on all fours like some kind of reptile, his skin had turned completely ash-gray, nearly invisible against the snow, with only those blood-red eyes standing out starkly. 12 at the front, 3 at the back door, Evander reported calmly, his eyes fixed on the surveillance feed. Silas is still motionless under that oak tree. Mom, they're talking, Nora whispered, her eyes closed and her little face tense. Uncle Merrick has a voice in his head, telling him how to attack. My heart tightened. Silas, Nora shook her head. No, it's something darker. It spoke through Uncle Merrick, Evander, and I exchanged a wary glance. Whatever was controlling Merrick was far more dangerous than we had imagined. Initiate Phase 1, I said. Evander pressed several buttons. The security perimeter of the safe house silently activated. Automatic turrets rose from the walls. Pressure-sensitive mines hidden in the snow armed themselves, and the electric fence began to hum. The moment the first mutant crashed into the wall, the battle began. Fire. A high-voltage current surged through the unlucky one's body. He let out an inhuman shriek, convulsed, and collapsed. But this didn't stop the others. They trampled over their fallen comrade, frantically scaling the wall. The automated turrets opened fire, precisely hitting one invader after another. Yet the mutants seemed impervious to pain, continuing their advance even after being shot. Merrick, in particular, dodged bullets with agility, climbing to the top of the wall as swiftly as a spider. He's evolved, Evander murmured. His motor nerves and reaction speed far surpassed those of ordinary humans, and far beyond last time, I added, recalling the battle from a few days ago. Marik's rate of mutation was unsettling. Suddenly, Nora screamed, behind us, the people behind have a bomb. I immediately switched to the rear door surveillance and sure enough, saw 3 mutants stuffing a package through the door gap. The countdown showed only 10 seconds left. Take Nora to the basement, I shouted to Evander while activating the emergency lockdown protocol. Without hesitation, Evander scooped up Nora and rushed toward the inner safe room. I remained at the control console, triggering the rear door's defense mechanism. A specially designed alloy plate descended from within, completely sealing the exit. The shockwave from the explosion rattled the entire safe house, but the blast-resistant layer successfully withstood the damage. Surveillance footage showed the rear door had been breached with a gap, yet the alloy plate remained unscathed. Phase 1 complete, I reported over the radio. They've breached the perimeter but lost 6 men. Copy that. Evander's voice came through. Nora says Silas is on the move. Sure enough. The tall, dark figure that had been standing motionless under the tree in the surveillance feed finally stirred. He began advancing toward the safe house with an unsettlingly deliberate gait, while the other mutants automatically cleared a path for him. I zoomed in, trying to get a clear look at Silas's face, but his features remained hidden in the shadow of his hood. The only visible part was a single hand emerging from the black robe, its skin an unnatural bluish-gray. The fingernails elongated into black claws. "Initiate Phase 2, I ordered." The main building of the safe house lit up with red lights, all windows and doors automatically locked, and the ventilation system switched to internal circulation. This was our second line of defense, letting the intruders think they were about to succeed, only to trap them all at once. Merrick was the first to rush toward the front door, using his mutated limbs to frantically pound the bulletproof glass. His strength was astonishing, and cracks soon appeared in the glass. Now, I pressed the button, the front door suddenly swung open, and Merrick, carried by his momentum, stumbled inside. What greeted him was a high-voltage electric net, a current strong enough to stun an elephant surged through his body. He convulsed and collapsed, temporarily immobilized. The other mutants rushed in eagerly upon seeing this. "Exactly what we wanted. Shut the door and beat the dog." Evander's voice came through the earpiece. He had already returned to my side, holding a modified shotgun. I activated the second phase of the trap. The floor suddenly tilted, coated with a special lubricant. The mutants lost their footing and slipped one after another. Meanwhile, several nozzles descended from the ceiling, spraying a transparent liquid. "Ignite," Evander shouted. I pressed the final button. The electric sparks ignited the alcohol mist sprayed in the air, instantly turning the entire foyer into a sea of flames. The mutants screamed and writhed in the fire, emitting a nauseating stench of burning flesh. But what sent chills down my spine was that some of them, even while engulfed in flames, still struggled to crawl forward. Silas didn't come in. Evander stared intently at the monitor. He stopped in the courtyard, as if waiting for something. Just then, an unexpected voice came from the fiery scene. It was Vesper, somehow. She had gotten mixed in with the mutants and was now crawling toward us with great difficulty, her body covered in burns. Help me," she rasped. "Luna, I know about Nora." I froze. "About Nora? Could be a trap," Evander warned, but Nora's voice suddenly came through the earpiece. "Mom, she's telling the truth. She wants to tell you a secret." I gritted my teeth, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and sprayed a path to drag Vesper over. Her condition was terrible. Half her face was burned. Her clothes were smoking, but she seemed conscious. "Why?" Her first words stunned me. "Why? Switch the children. What are you talking about?" I snapped. Vesper coughed painfully. "Merrick doesn't know I told you. Jasper is actually your child." Time seemed to stand still. I widened my eyes. "What? We didn't switch," Vesper gasped out. "I just lied to him that Nora was his daughter, so he would help me deal with you." She coughed up blood. "Jasper is your biological son." My mind went blank. For these 5 years, I had always thought Jasper was Merrick and Vesper's child, while Nora was mine. But now she's saying, "Proof," I demanded sharply. "Jasper, blood type," Vesper struggled to say. "He's AB. Both Merrick and I are type A. Basic biology knowledge tells me that 2 parents with type A blood cannot have an AB child. But if I were type O, and Merrick type A, why?" My voice trembled. "Why would you do this? Hate you." Vesper's gaze began to fade. "Merrick loved you. I couldn't bear it." Her words were cut off by a violent cough. Then, her eyes suddenly widened as she looked behind me. "He's coming." I turned around and saw Silas finally stepping into the safe house. The flames seemed to have no effect on him. He walked through the fire with such ease, his black robe not even catching fire. "Luna," Vesper grabbed my hand with her last ounce of strength. "Be careful. He's not." Her words were left unfinished. A shadow flashed by, and a bloody hole suddenly appeared in Vesper's throat. Her eyes widened as she collapsed silently. What a touching reunion. A voice spoke, but not from Silas's direction. It seemed to echo directly in my mind, with a metallic resonance. A shame it was interrupted. Silas, or rather, the thing wearing Silas's clothes, finally pulled back its hood. What was revealed wasn't a human face, but a writhing mass of black substance, fluid-like yet misty, faintly forming the contours of facial features. "Mom." Nora's scream came through the earpiece. "That's not a person, it's lots and lots of tiny bugs." Evander immediately raised his gun and fired, but the bullets passed through the shadowy mass without causing any harm. The dark figure continued to advance toward us, its form constantly shifting. Physical attacks are ineffective. Evander shouted, "Fall back to the 3rd defensive line." We quickly retreated, running toward the basement entrance, but the shadowy mass suddenly accelerated, cutting off our path. At the same time, movement sounded behind us. Merrick had somehow regained his mobility and was crawling out of the fire, blocking our retreat. "Luna," Marik's voice no longer sounded human, more like the growl of some beast. "Finally, caught you." Trapped between them with no escape, Evander shielded me. but I knew conventional weapons were useless against these two monsters. At that very moment, Nora suddenly ran out from the basement. "Nora, go back," I shouted in terror, but she didn't listen. Instead, she ran straight to me and tightly grabbed my hand. "Mom," together, a strange sensation came from our clasped hands. Nora's palm grew hotter and hotter until it emitted a faint blue light. The light quickly spread, enveloping both Nora and me, and then it burst outward. A blue wave of light expanded outward from us in all directions. When it touched Merrick and the shadowy mass, they let out piercing screams. Merrick fell to his knees in agony, the black substance beneath his skin churning like boiling water, while the shadowy mass was forced back several steps, its form becoming unstable. "Keep going," Evander shouted. "It's working." I held Nora tightly, feeling the strange energy flowing between us. The light grew stronger, and the shadow's screams became even more shrill. Finally, with a loud explosion, the shadow burst into countless black particles, dissipating into the air. Merrick, meanwhile, lay curled on the ground, convulsing in pain. The black substance beneath his skin was receding, revealing his original human skin, though it was severely burned and festered. "Is it over?" I gasped, panting heavily. The blue light had vanished, and both Nora and I were completely exhausted. "For now," Evander replied warily, scanning our surroundings, "but I don't think that thing is truly dead, just banished." I turned to look at Merrick, who was barely clinging to life. He had reverted to his human form, but his vitality was fading fast. "Jasper," he rasped. "Was he really mine?" I remained silent for a moment, then shook my head. "I don't know, but no matter what, he was innocent." Merrick closed his eyes, and a murky tear rolled down. Then he moved no more. The battle was over. 3 days later, we began clearing the wreckage of the safe house. The snowstorm outside had weakened, and the temperature had risen to around -10 degrees. The radio occasionally picked up faint signals. The government was organizing survivors, establishing safe zones, but also warning that some survivors in certain areas were exhibiting abnormal behavior, urging the public to remain vigilant. "We should leave." I announced the decision during breakfast. "Where to?" Nora asked. After that battle, she had become quieter, but also more mature. "South." I looked at Evander. "What do you think?" Evander pondered for a moment. "I agree. The extreme cold is just the first phase of the apocalypse. What comes next could be floods, droughts. We need a safer place." And I hesitated. "I want to go find Jasper." Although Vesper's dying words might have been a lie, I had to confirm. If Jasper really is my child, I can't let him survive alone in this apocalyptic world. Evander nodded understandingly. "I have a lead. Arc 7 is located in the southern mountains. If any government organization still exists, that's the most likely stronghold." "When do we leave?" Nora asked. Surprisingly, she didn't seem afraid. Instead, she looked somewhat eager. "Early tomorrow morning," I said. "Today we need to prepare all the essentials." In the evening, as we were packing, Nora suddenly said, "Mom, I had a dream." "What dream, sweetheart?" "A dream about the three of us, in a big vehicle." She struggled to describe, and so many other people. "We built a new home together." I smiled and patted her head. Maybe it wasn't just a dream, but a premonition. In this crazy world, who knows? At dawn the next day, we were ready to go. Most of the supplies from the safe house had been stored in my dimensional space: food, medicine, weapons, tools, enough to sustain us for a long time. Evander gave the equipment one final check, then looked at me. "Ready, partner?" I nodded and tipped Nora's hand. Ready. The sunlight pierced through the clouds, shining upon us and bringing long-awaited warmth. The three of us, a reborn, a gifted one, and a veteran, embarked on an unknown journey. The rules of the apocalypse have changed, but the instinct to survive remains the same. This time, I am no longer fighting alone. With Nora and Evander, perhaps we can find a glimmer of hope in this crumbling world. The road ahead is long, but at least we walk it together.